Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to April Milsac.
My mom always preached stranger danger. April Milsac was last seen walking her family dog.
April's missing. Something's gone wrong. State police and the FBI are scouring the entire village for evidence.
I was just texting all of my friends and I made up. And everybody responded back to me except April.
Police are searching for a dented white painter's van.
My first thought was serial killer. And just when we hear April's voice, see his text from her. And it was such an odd text, and yet he never responded.
When you watch that video, it's bone chilling.
That's why it's so scary, because you never know who it is. Young girls should know, don't be afraid to speak up.
A young woman is missing tonight after leaving a bar with a stranger, then texting help to a friend. You are watching her terrifying abduction.
A missing woman's new body was discovered in this ravine.
Miraculously, the young woman survived. There is an alarming crisis of violence, kidnapping, and murder against innocent women. The senseless murder has struck a chord with thousands of women. This has sparked a global movement online of women sharing their own truths. They're united under a hashtag, text me when you get home, a phrase that women are all too familiar with.
It's one of those towns you don't lock your doors usually at night, and you don't think anything bad's going to ever happen there. Oh, the orchard trails in Armada were wonderful because you could walk a dog, you could jog, you could hike, you could ride a bike. Pretty much everybody out there is just out there enjoying the weather and enjoying life.
I saw the community as like this safe, tight-knit community where everybody knew each other.
Yeah, I thought it would be the perfect environment to raise a family, be with Jennifer and April. I raised April with Jennifer since she was 6 years old.
April's parents, they had very goofy personality with April. They were always messing around with each other. She'd be screaming jokes at them from across the house, and we would all just laugh.
Me and April had a lot of fun. April used to love just spending time with me. We once flew a kite, and while you have to run to get a kite up, she goes, well, you jiggle when you run.
I just think of April as sunshine. She just pretty much lit up a room as she walked through it. I didn't know how much I was missing until I had April. When she was younger, she would put on funny videos for her friends. When she got older, everything she did was on the phone. She even did her schoolwork on the phone. I'm April's best friend. We were friends since the 6th grade, so we didn't have the same class, but we were both the loners that got left out of everything, and then magically we just became friends. So she was like the sweetest angelic human on the planet. April was absolutely gorgeous. I think everybody wanted to be her. She was kind of also an awkward soul, much like me, so she liked her private time. She was also really creative. She liked to draw. She liked to do her makeup. She liked fashion a lot. She would always be shopping. We would message each other frequently, mainly trying to correspond our outfits or makeup for the next day. If we had a spirit week, we'd be like, who's dressing good, who's dressing silly. She was definitely the creative one, the loud one, the crazy one. One thing I mainly remember,
from her texting all the time. She had a big teddy bear phone case, and she would just hold it around. Looks like she's carrying a stuffed animal through the hallways, but just for fun.
She met Austin, which was in 7th grade. They were dating just all year. She had boyfriends in the past, but nothing like Austin. April was kind of like the strong one in that relationship.
I would actually invite Austin over to help me work on cars so I could get to know him a little better. You know, you're always a little uneasy if you don't understand or know a person.
She was in 8th grade, just graduated 8th grade. She was very happy.
I actually got into a fight with her on the last day of school, so we had not talked. I can't even remember what it was about. It was really dumb middle school stuff. But I went on vacation, got back, I texted her, "Hey April, I'm so sorry about what happened. Can we hang out soon? I miss you." And she said, "Yeah, let's plan something soon."
When April slept in, she got up around noon like most teenagers on summer vacation. Pretty much stayed in the room the whole time. Then played on the computer.
We would message each other, "Hey, want to make plans? We can go to the mall, go shopping." The last thing I said to her was, "Yeah, I'll text you, we'll make plans."
It felt like a typical summer evening.
April was eating a salad. I made a silly remark about eating rabbit food and pretty much told her I loved her, went to work. April and Penny grew up a little bit together. That was pretty much her dog. She used to take Penny on walks. Pretty much wherever April was, the dog would be following her wherever she went.
She backed the snacks and a water bowl for the dog, and she walked out the door with the dog, waiting to say I love you or anything. It's just, I figured she'd go on for a walk, she'd be back.
Lots of people would walk their dogs on the trail. That was a common thing. I was never concerned about it going out. As a small community, if I wasn't watching her, one of the other neighbors would be watching.
My mom always preached stranger danger, don't talk to strangers, but in that community, everyone knew each other. Nobody was really a stranger, so you kind of just talk to everybody.
About an hour after she left, maybe an hour and a half, and I realized April wasn't home yet. I only plot to spend a lot of time outside, so I wasn't as concerned yet. But she also used the dog as an excuse to go meet up with friends in the park or go see Austin, even though I know what was going on anyways, but kind of just sort of think she would get away with something. If she didn't have the dog with her, I would not have been as concerned as I was. And knowing that she didn't pack that much for the dog, I started just sending her text messages, bring the dog home. Because I didn't get a response back after the first one, turned the flyer, second one went out. Then third one, and then come home.
April was always responding right away to people whenever they texted.
Then I started calling, kind of going phone call as well as getting a text.
Your call has been forwarded
It was going to voicemail. And then I started calling Austin, figuring those two were together. But he said he hasn't heard from her. That's when I started getting more concerned. And just want to hear April's voice, see a text from her, see a message from her. told me about this fake text that he got from her saying that she almost got kidnapped on OMFG. But he was doing some cell service, so he got the text an hour after she sent it. By the time he got it, he assumed that it was her just playing joke or something like that. I could think of this. What did he know about it that we didn't?
And Jennifer calls me up and said, April's missing. I told work, I gotta leave. Something's gone wrong. I don't know what it is, but something with April.
There's only 3 different directions she could have gone. So his friend went one way, I went one way, and I went the other way. Is it a male or female? Female. Okay, and you don't believe she's breathing? I don't believe so, no. It was an obvious murder. It was a young girl. We weren't sure of her age. She looked like a teenager. The Armada Police Department is a very small town. There's maybe one officer on duty at a time. And so it wasn't unusual to get a call from them for help. But in this case, it was all hands on deck. The area where her body was found was wooded enough that you couldn't see it.
You have to go down about 6 feet into a ditch, across the ditch, up on the other side, and through some very, very heavy bushes and trees.
We would have probably not even found her there if it wasn't for the dog. And that dog literally led them down into the ravine where her body was.
She was found with her shirt up, her pants down, and clear bruises about her body.
Well, the trauma to her head was obvious. You could see that there were actually shoe prints in her face.
The brutality upon which she died by being stomped to death. This was as brutal as it gets and as senseless as it gets.
It was so physically violent. It was really, I couldn't really comprehend it. I didn't know the body had been found. I just know animal control was out there. And that's when we were met by an officer.
They tell me that I need to stay outside. It's a small police department. And they were doing interviews with Jennifer, and there's not much room in there.
And so when she left, did she say where she was going?
She didn't say exactly the path that she was going to take, but there's 2 paths that she usually takes. She usually goes to the trail by the Greenway with her.
Yeah, but it was an iPhone. And she definitely had it with her when she left the house.
Yeah.
I'm listening to the radio on the news. They're talking about a young girl's body found on the trails, and I'm starting to put pieces together in my own head that, well, this is the only reason we could possibly be here.
Okay, so top to bottom, what was she wearing when she?
White tank top, light blue jean shorts with a black stripe on them, like Once Jennifer described the clothes April was wearing that evening and described the dog she was with, we knew it was April. I know she was in shock, but I remember the wailing that night. This is a mother of a daughter who's brutally murdered. And what can you do? I mean, except let her, let her cry.
Everything was taken from me that day. The worst news that I could have found out. Okay.
I lost everything right there.
It was just really, really tough at the time to just not get caught up in that and just try and focus on what the job was and try and keep the emotions aside. Well, certainly in any investigation, we always look at the people closest to the victim.
Being I'm stepfather, I'm person of interest, obviously. Everybody directly in April's life were the first ones questioned. It was a very long, long night.
It's a process of elimination. Once we had eliminated the mother and father, then we look at other close friends, boyfriend, girlfriend.
Just for the mere fact of him being the closest person to her, him being her boyfriend, of course, we're going to take a good look at him. And so we interviewed him at length. First thing we always do is ask for phones. So we, of course, took his phone, started looking through his phone to try and determine what was the status of their relationship, if they had any problems. We find this text message he got from April around 6:24 that evening that said, "I think I almost got kidnapped. OMFG." That was such an odd text message to read, and yet he never responded to that text.
And at first, I think that she was over exaggerating. It was some kind of sick joke.
That doesn't make sense to me, okay? And you understand why, right?
When April was found, her phone was not with her. We don't know where it was. One theory is that he somehow sent this message to himself to get himself off the hook and make it seem like he was innocent somehow.
I can see how it doesn't let you.
Why is that?
Because last time I saw her in an argument, and I text messages from an argument, and she's missing. I was freaked out and deleted the 4 messages.
They're 15 and 14 years old. It's not unusual. But because there had been that sort of anger in the relationship, that's the first thing that you zero in on.
We thought, well, we better take a good look at Austin and figure out where he was that evening, why he didn't respond to this text message.
My friends wanted me to go help move TV. Well, I got the TV probably around 4 or 4:30, and left at McDonald's. Drive-through. We came back from my house about half an hour.
Boyfriends have every reason to lie, especially in a murder investigation. There has to be corroborating evidence for us to believe it.
I picked up my iPad and I was just texting all of my friends in Armada. I had heard from my mom that night that it happened that there was a body that was found on the trail. I also texted my friends and everybody responded back to me except April. I didn't find out the truth until the next morning.
The village of Armada, stunned as the girl found murdered along the Macomb Orchard Trail, is identified as one of their own, 14-year-old April Milsac.
When I heard the words, "It's April," I didn't want to believe it was true.
There were definitely a handful of people who didn't like April. It was simply because she was happy living her life and other people just didn't want to see that. Anyone that was close to April was a suspect, and that's why it's so scary, because you never know who it is.
The killer was on the loose, and we couldn't afford to rule anyone out.
Police are searching for a dented white painter's van.
Now you've got this white van, which plays into everybody's worst fears.
We brought in an additional 20 officers in the morning and another 40 by the afternoon. When the phone is missing, you'd think, well, there's something on that phone that would implicate someone, so we had to find that phone. We took April's phone to the Michigan State Police Computer Crimes Unit. We had hoped on her phone that we would find text message calls just to indicate somebody that she had met, somebody she was supposed to meet that evening, or some indication of who she was having a relationship with. Roger Mace, we learned, attended the same school as April. The officer listens to Roger talk, and the officer's gut feeling is something's not right, that maybe this teen was in love with April.
We did learn about other young men that may have been interested in her.
What we needed to find out was he obsessed with her, and of course, what was he doing during the time of the murder? We looked at him as far as if he had any relationship with April or anything to do with her.
In a city about 15 miles away, we were able to go to that fast food restaurant and actually pull the video of them in the drive-through lane.
And sure enough, you could see Austin and his friend pass through that drive-through right at the time that he said he was there. The coroner couldn't give us a time of death exactly, but the murder occurred sometime between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. And Austin was at McDonald's, confirmed by video, at 6:30 p.m., which would have cleared him from that time frame, because there's no way that he could have murdered her and made it to that McDonald's. I never thought Austin had any handedness at all. None whatsoever.
Once we'd eliminated the boyfriend, it was the first step in us recognizing that it may not actually be anybody that she knows.
He was friendly with April, but it didn't go beyond that. And he claimed to be at work during the time of the murder. He was actually at nothing at all or any contact with her. And he was cleared also with an alibi.
If it had been a friend, if it had been a relative, then we would not have had that text. Because those texts had the generalized information saying that she thought she was being followed and she was afraid.
It became really tough. We were starting to look at it and say, is this possibly a stranger? The big question is, why? That's what I want to know is why. Why my child? Why anybody's child?
The next few days after that, I was keeping up on my social medias, making sure everyone else was still safe too. I didn't want another friend of mine getting hurt.
Nobody wanted to go outside. Nobody wanted to do anything. You have to assume they are always potentially in danger. The official cause of death was blunt force head trauma and asphyxiation. And that asphyxiation came from the stomping on her head and on her neck. The key piece of evidence that was on April's body was actually the footprint that was left on her face. It gave us a clear pattern of the shoe tread. And
It's what our lab people call the herringbone pattern. Getting those shoes were a priority.
The next step was to do a door-to-door canvas.
Knocking on every door, asking neighbors, people in the area if they heard, saw anything. So we received information from one of the neighbors. She was a young girl, and she had seen a van, a white van, driving slowly down her block. The driver and the passenger were looking at her, pointing at her, and she felt really creeped out about it, enough to the fact that she videotaped the van.
Now you've got this white van, which plays into everybody's worst fears. It was a very strong lead.
We wanted to know who was in this van and what they were doing in that neighborhood. We put it on the news.
Police are searching for a dented white painter's van. Investigators say the van was seen near where Milsac's body was discovered.
Right after I saw that on the news, my first thought was serial killer.
We had to find the murderer or murderess because we were afraid they might be out stalking other victims.
After April passed, I didn't want to believe it. I would go to our messages, reread them, and pretend like we were texting in that moment just to make it feel like it wasn't real.
Authorities have fielded over 600 tips so far, with more coming in.
And unfortunately, we had received hundreds of tips about white vans, not just in the area, but in the whole county.
I didn't know what to think of being a fan. I wanted to wait till I heard of his face from the police.
And then a gentleman came forward and indicates that is actually my van. I'm a contractor. I was at this address.
And was showing his coworker the houses that he had done. And so that was confirmed with the coworker, and their stories matched together, and so they were cleared of any wrongdoing.
It was about the time that we were eliminating the white van that we were beginning to receive the calls from the individuals that were actually on the trail.
A father and his two daughters, what they had seen April, right around 6:30 p.m. on the Orchard Lake Pass. They said that she was talking to a man on a motorcycle. This was completely new to us. She was looking at her phone. The man had his helmet on, and he was kind of walking his motorcycle next to her. They assumed they were together because they were walking together. But the reaction between April and him was neutral. It was not friendly at all. I wasn't scared, but it wasn't friendly either.
The witness, he is a dirt bike guy and was able to describe very clearly the type, the make, the model. Once we had that description, we were also then able to interview others who were on the trail and again consistently describe the same motorcycle, the same individual, and the same modifications made to that motorcycle.
Now our investigation changed completely from a white van or to someone she knew to a man on a motorcycle. Well, we had flooded the whole area with every police officer on duty to look for this motorcycle. And fortunately, one of our officers who was familiar with the area was driving through the neighborhood and saw a motorcycle. Of course, he was by himself, so he stopped to take a picture.
He was going home for lunch. He came back and he said, I got these photographs. Take a look at this. I think it matches the bike. And in fact, they matched what the individuals thought they saw on the trail.
We knew nothing about James McGillis except that he didn't have any kind of record. And he was cooperative when talking to police. I showed him the motorcycle and showed him the helmet he had on and described his clothing. He told us that he was wearing a white shoe, but even a layman could tell by looking at the shoes that they didn't have the same herringbone pattern.
And I said, well, it's his brother. So obviously a brother can lie for somebody. So why don't we just ask for his phone? And his phone actually put him in the village of Armada during the time of our murder.
Police and FBI agents are raiding a home in Wells Township in connection to the April Milsac murder. Motivation for the search may be a motorcycle seen near the trail at the time.
Yes, during the search warrant in the backyard, there was marijuana plants. Both James Van Callis and his father were arrested for the grow operation. We were hoping to find DNA evidence on his motorcycle, on his clothes, or on the helmet, and of course looking at shoes. So we took a lot of other shoes out of the house, but none of those shoes matched the prints on her face. And of course, they analyzed those clothing items. It actually became obvious just looking at the helmet that it had been wiped out. I mean, it was spotless clean. And we never did find DNA on anything out of his home. And so it's kind of up in the air with him.
I actually thought James McCallis might be innocent. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
The whole town came. It was just sadness, overloaded everywhere.
All I can really remember was seeing April's mom just sobbing, and that's what broke my heart the most. Just knowing that April, her only daughter, wasn't there anymore for her was really heartbreaking. April was everything to me. They took her, they took everything away from me.
An unknown mourner at a victim's funeral will always raise a red flag.
I think a lot of us just wanted the truth. We were scared about who was out there. Like, why haven't we caught anybody yet?
He's a stranger attending the funeral of someone he didn't know, so obviously they targeted him. It's some sort of narcissistic kind of situation that a murderer would want to go to the funeral. But he turned out to be another police officer from another area just paying his respects. Every time we heard something new, it was just kind of like we were reliving it, but through different eyes each time.
It's the worst feeling you can imagine. You're always going through anxiety, waiting for the police.
But it was the next day after the search warrant that we received a call from James Van Callis' girlfriend at the time, Crystal. She was crying and upset.
Crystal told us that something unusual had happened the night of April's murder.
He had been out on his motorcycle, came back, and she saw him in his room wiping down his helmet and wiping down these black and white basketball shoes, which were the shoes he actually wore that day, not white shoes.
And after that night, she never saw those shoes again.
We took all the computers out of James Van Callis' home, looked at his internet browsing history, and there was very odd searches in Google.
It's like older men speaking to younger girls. What do younger girls see in older men? Why do younger girls become interested in older men?
Also on his phone, we found, I call them stalker videos. He was videotaping younger girls, teenagers, without them knowing. So this opened up a whole new view of who James Van Callis was. Instead of an initial scan looking for text messages and phone calls, they wanted to look at every last bit of information on that phone. In the interim, one of our officers went on to James' Facebook page. And scrolling through all the pictures, she actually saw a picture of James wearing black and white basketball shoes.
We asked Crystal, are these the shoes? And she said yes.
I remember looking at the picture of April's face, and right on her cheek, you could see this little emblem, and it turned out to be the Air Jordan logo.
We went online and we actually ordered a pair of those shoes.
And we sent those to the lab for comparison. And it was the exact same pattern.
I mean, I recall to this moment getting the phone call from Becky to say we're all meeting at the sheriff's department because the FBI has something fantastic.
The FBI computer crimes unit found that a sports tracker app was on that phone, and it actually had been in use during the time of the murder.
We know that on that app, she was walking at 2.2 miles per hour.
Right around the time that April sent that text message, you can see that her speed is starting to increase. Like something's scaring her to increase her pace.
The app tells us she's walking at 4.4 miles per hour, so now she's doubled her pace, which clearly shows panic and fear.
The phone's movements got really jerky. You could see the path going in and out of the woods, and it went on for 10 minutes.
When you watch that video, you see the last 15 minutes of April's life, and you see her murder electronically, and it's bone-chilling. And then when the phone leaves the murder site, it's going between 17 and 19 miles per hour up the path. That's all the confirmation we need that it was, in fact, that motorcycle. I mean, that singularly was what convinced us we had the right person. Because it was like, bingo.
The track went right past a house that we knew had surveillance video.
When they asked for the video from that time period, guess what we saw? We saw that motorcycle.
The surveillance video and the phone taken together shows absolutely 100% there was a motorcycle driving April's phone, escaping from the murder. We knew because we had it on GPS. And that video was good enough that you could see the details enough that matched James Van Callis' bike to a T.
It was real clear where April's phone was the key witness in this case. Van Callis' phone was his Judas.
Everything came together like puzzle pieces, making a huge picture that it was James Van Callis who murdered April Milsac.
They didn't know each other. They'd never met before. This was a random meeting on a trail on a day that she just happened to be walking her dog. He attempted to pursue her, and she resisted.
It was at that moment, this anger and rage of being rejected, that he decided that he was going to attack her. Once he was attacking her, I think that's when he decided he was going to kill her.
He snapped. A small 14-year-old girl who was up against a guy who was approximately 6 foot, 6'2". She never had a chance.
I'm sure she was fighting in the last moments. Up until the end, I'm sure she was fighting with all she had.
The judge in this case was a woman. We know that Van Callis has trouble with women. Van Callis was given an order by the judge. And he turned around and he screamed at her.
Just flipped a switch again in the middle of trial, a murder trial.
What chance do you think April Milsac had when she refused his advances?
February 8th, 2016. Yesterday, Callis was murdered and was sent to court to serve life in prison.
We do not have the death penalty in Michigan. If we did, this would be one of those cases that it have been used.
I think it was meant to be that he got caught for the sake of April, for the sake of all the other young girls out there, that there was justice for her. She deserved justice.
Because it was just such a release of emotion and stress that we had been going through for so long. It was enough to bring me to tears.
It wasn't the closure that I would have wanted, because it did bring her back. Walked out the door and in between. April represented a whole generation of girls her age. And so hopefully for other young girls out there, knowing that your phone is your safety net, girls are taught to be polite to strangers or to whoever, but also they should know, don't be afraid to speak up. I like to think that the joy that she had overshadows this tragedy. She touched our hearts. I really do wonder every day how April would have turned out. She would have turned 21 earlier this year. I wish she was living her fullest life right now. That was cut too short.
After April passed, I sent a couple random messages that year saying like, I know you're not gonna read this, I know you'll never see this, but I miss you. Just hoping for a response one day.
And I wish she would have had a long life, but all I can say is I hope she's in a better place.
I think of it as a standard day in real estate.
She was going to show a property, but they had not heard from her.
It was like my mom just disappeared. Who could have taken her and why?
Everybody's a suspect, or everybody's a person of interest.
They had a code word that would signal if they were in trouble. It was done via text. And from there, it's like a nightmare started. My mom didn't know because everything she was told was a lie.
Everything started to move. My brain was like, wait, what's happening?
Suddenly, my phone lights up with these text messages from my mom. We went from this flood of relief and elation to complete horror in one text.
A young woman is missing tonight after leaving a bar with a stranger, then texting help to a friend.
You are watching her terrifying abduction.
A missing woman's nude body was discovered in this ravine.
Miraculously, the young woman survived.
There is an alarming crisis of violence, kidnapping, and murder against innocent women.
The senseless murder has struck a chord with thousands of women.
This has sparked a global movement online of women sharing their own fears. They're united under a hashtag, text me when you get home, a phrase that women are all too familiar with.
When I think of my mom, I think of acceptance and love. I am Beverly Carter's son, and the oldest of three boys. My mom had me when she was 16, so in a lot of ways we kind of grew up together, and we were extremely close. By nature, my mom was very sweet, very kind, very lovable.
I just got home and got this beautiful present in the mail. Love it. Love it, love it. And I also got your card. You're so sweet. I love you very much.
I also think it's important to really express how tough she was. As a mom of three boys, she was not letting us get away with anything. Dad was the one out working, and mom was taking care of the household, and she did it.
As a friend, she was one of my best friends, but as a mother-in-law, she was just an angel. We'd go shopping. We both had times in our lives when we struggled with our weight. So we'd go on diets together and we'd challenge each other. She'd come to the house and we'd have weigh-ins. Beverly and I text a lot. She was a quick responder for the most part, especially with, a family member.
I think the beauty of her career in real estate is that although she had lived in that small community and not being exposed to so many different facets of diversity, serving people throughout, the real estate process gave her the opportunity to meet people from all walks of life.
Beverly and I worked together probably 8 to 10 years. She was always upbeat when things weren't going her way. She always found a silver lining in things. She just filled the room. I mean, when you met Beverly, you didn't forget her. She just had this personality that was kind of bigger than life. She made you feel like you were her friend. Beverly was very successful. She worked hard for it. She was at the office late at night. She'd come in early.
There were times in my mom's career that she was within the top 10 agents in the entire state of Arkansas. And she was one of those salespeople that just made the whole process look so easy.
She had a Cadillac. She dressed to the nines all the time. She always wore jewelry. Her hair was always done. She always smelled really, really good. She wore the same perfume all the time and looked like she had a lot of money.
I think she was coming into this new awakening as this 50-year-old bad A woman that was a little sassy, and it was just really fun to watch her. I think of it as a standard day in real estate. My mom had worked in the office that morning. She had gone to a luncheon that was hosted by an affiliate, and she was really excited that she won $50 in a raffle. She texted my dad to check in with him and to let my dad know what the rest of her day looked like. My mom's plan was to show this property to these out-of-state buyers at 6 p.m. and at the conclusion of showing that property that she would swing by, pick up dinner from their favorite local Mexican restaurant, and that she would be home later. Real estate agent, working a little late, you grab dinner to go, meet your spouse at home, like so many days that had happened before it. The process of buying a home, selling a home, you don't associate dangers, even though they seem so obvious, because it does involve, in certain situations, meeting with perfect strangers in vacant homes. My mom was a self-professed scaredy cat. She took her personal safety very seriously. She took certain steps, letting Dad know where she would be, keeping her purse locked inside her vehicle while she showed property, to protect and safeguard her wallet, to personal information that was within her purse.
I was laying in bed. Carl and I think, had turned on the TV maybe to watch something. His dad called. He said, son, I haven't heard from your mom. And my Carl was like, Dad, I'm sure she's showing a house. I'm sure she's just trying to get it under contract. I'm sure everything's fine.
He couldn't get her to respond to his text messages and his phone calls. And as he's telling me this, 8:30 didn't seem that late, considering the chaotic nature of real estate. My immediate internal response was that this is 100% work related, but the more I talked to my dad and the more I listened to the worry in his voice, I knew that I couldn't put him at ease without getting involved to help. And so the plan that I encouraged was, Dad, I'll go to Mom's office. You go where she said she'd be showing property that night. We'll get to our respective locations. We'll check in. One of us is going to find Mom. And all this will be put to rest. I arrived at my mom's brokerage to find a dark building with an empty parking lot, no one there.
I reached out to her broker and Beverly's assistant. They had not heard from her.
I instantly jumped to scenarios where these buyers were bringing in friends or family to also tour the home and perhaps even writing an offer. But then my dad called. My dad arrives at the scene of this home. The front door's wide open, trying to find any evidence of my mom. There was nothing to be found. But then there in the driveway is my mom's car. Something was wrong. Something was off. It was like my mom just disappeared.
It was all kind of so surreal. Was she injured somewhere and couldn't get to a phone? Did she just not have her phone on her? And, she was working.
The text communication that I had with Mom was always a bit hit and miss, mainly because of her profession. So it really wasn't that uncommon for me to send Mom a text, her not respond for an hour or two, but I always knew that the second she saw that text that she would be responding. That night, after going to my mom's brokerage, not finding her there, learning from my dad that my mom's car had been left at this home, I encouraged him to immediately contact law enforcement.
When I got to the house, the family was there and the officers were there. That's when I began looking inside the house. I noticed that the house is vacant. There's a lot of dust around. You could tell in the dust that somebody had been in there. Disturbances in the dust. So you could tell somebody had walked through there. Then we go outside and I look around outside and I notice a tire track that leads up to the door. And then we have Beverly's car there with her purse and a notebook inside. At that point, thinking, okay, well, no, something's happened to her. Because I don't know what woman in the world is going to run off and leave her purse behind.
It was so hard to reconcile how she could be conducting business somewhere without her car, without her purse.
I don't think my brain wanted to wrap around the fact that it was something detrimental that was happening.
Even in the back of my mind, it just still didn't seem possible that my sweet mom, this wonderful grandma, could have been the target of a crime where someone would just take her. trying to use my cell phone, my dad's cell phone, and to engage with my mom's cell phone to get her to respond.
Generally, the abductors is somebody they know. You know, in this particular case, is where we looked at first.
You've seen the shows, you've heard the stories, and typically couples that have been married for 34 years, someone disappears, you look to the spouse.
You know, you always look to the person that's closest to your victim, which in this case would have been husband.
Dad went through the home yelling my mom's name, even got in the attic just to make sure that nothing had happened and she'd been left somewhere. And there was nothing to be found.
Come to find out, Carl had been in there. And, you know, at that point, it kind of contaminates the crime scene.
They had many questions from my dad, but all the while, my dad had retreated to his truck. I was trying to convince them that Dad's a good guy, Dad doesn't have anything to do with this, but they were just doing their job. And they didn't know him, they didn't know me, and so they were, you know, leaving no stone unturned.
We found somebody across the street that saw a black car and a white male that was at the house, and saw him back it up to the house.
The neighbor had told the detectives that night that they had seen a black car at this home, but we really had no indication of any crime that he had committed. Where is she? So the later it got, the more suspect that it seemed that my mom would be in trouble without responding to everything that we were sending to her phone.
Inside her vehicle was a notebook, and you could tell that she had used it for work. And the notebook was open, and you could see it through the window. Everybody's a suspect, or everybody's a person of interest. You have to follow the evidence.
At this point, it's after midnight. This is 6 hours after that showing appointment time. And we're all huddled up and we're so concerned. And suddenly, Dad's phone lights up with these text messages from my mom. So as he's yelling that my mom is texting, we all come running. And there was just this collective excitement and relief. There's just this flood of emotion that mom's okay, mom's communicating with Dad, and of course the relief that this is all over. And then we went from this flood of relief and elation to complete horror in one text. As these texts came through, it was what you might expect someone to say, apologizing, explaining that the phone had been off. And then a third text came in. And the third text explained that my mom was out having drinks. And that was so not her. It was so uncharacteristic of her. My mom, early to bed, favorite drink was not alcohol, it was chocolate milk.
Sorry, out drinking with friends? My heart dropped because that was not her. That 100% was not her.
Nobody knew her better than her family. So if they said there's no way she would be out having drinks, you got to take that into consideration.
We knew instantly when that text message came through that not only had my mom been taken, but whoever had taken her was bold enough to take her cell phone, text someone pretending to be her. From the moment that that text was received, the world has never seen bigger. The possibilities of where my mom could be, the possibilities of who could have taken her and why seemed indefinite.
On the internet or make a phone call or text message, it's going to send a signal out to the nearest cell tower. I'm in my car following. Every time we get a ping, I would go to the location, and it became a straight line to just south of Little Rock. The phone pinged, I think, 3 times in this one location. So I went there and ended up being a commuter lot on the side of the interstate where people park to maybe carpool or something, and then the phone just turned off.
All we knew that it's just that she was gone. And the very next morning, just hours later, Friday morning, I just remember just sitting so confused. Like, the sun's back up, but we don't have my mom.
You couldn't believe it. Nothing like that had ever happened before. And it just kind of makes you sick at your stomach.
We all rushed up to the office. And from there, it's like a nightmare started.
We interviewed coworkers. We looked around her office.
They had a communication, a code word they could give one another that would signal if they were in trouble.
If we felt uneasy about a client, we could call the office and say, can you go get the red folder on my desk and bring it to we'd give the address if we could.
Typically, when the red folder alert was passed back and forth, it was done via text. And so that was the most discreet way. But also, it wasn't uncommon for one agent to just call another.
The longer it is, you don't get a good feeling. But there's always hope. And Beverly had so much faith in, you just hope for the best.
If you have never been part of a search party, be thankful. It is the hardest and worst thing I've ever been through in my entire life. I'm sorry. You're looking for a fingernail or a shred of a credit card, or a shred of a piece of clothing, and knowing that this is someone you know and love and you have memories with. It's very hard.
And the more time that passes, the less our chances get. So the more people that are out here helping, the better.
Carl was still in my mind. I didn't know that maybe he had somebody else involved. So it's just something we were going to have to eliminate. Now, there was a life insurance policy, and we thought maybe he had this done for the insurance money.
any type of, profession that you are, your income is dependent upon the volume that you produce. It kind of ebbed and flowed. So she at times was absolutely a rock star, top producer, and then she would step back from it for a little bit and enjoy the things in her life that she truly enjoyed, like the grandkids.
I don't remember ever truly pointing my finger at Carl Sr., but I didn't have any idea who else it could be.
I know Beverly kept a notebook, and she had where she was going all the time.
I saw some names, an email address, and a phone number on there.
The names were fictitious.
We figured out the email address and the phone number were both created from spoof numbers, which are fake numbers.
What my mom didn't know is as she was getting to know these people and their background, their interest in buying a home, what type of home, everything she was being told was a lie.
Carter's car was still in the driveway on Friday afternoon. This is where she was last seen in Scott.
The later it got, there became more and more kind of fervency to our efforts to try to find her because of this known 24-hour rule that you have to find a missing person in 24 hours or the outlook is so much more grim. And just counting down to that 24 hours, just the desperation grew. We took an all media and medium approach to trying to find my mom. From a paper flyer with my mom's photo being handed out and sent all over central Arkansas, up and through social media posts, we created hashtag Find Beverly. I was even reaching out to media outlets, just offering to do anything to help. I know what it's like to lay in the floor and cry because you have no energy or to do anything else. It began this process of trying to, through social media, trying to engage as many people as possible to find my mom.
There's just a lot of good people that are trying to help. And at that point, that's the best thing that they can do because at that we don't know where Beverly's at.
We're holding out hope. We were hoping we would find her.
Well, in order to create a spoof number, you have to have a real number. So when we ran paper on those numbers, we were able to find out that those numbers were created from a telephone number that returned to Crystal Howard. And that's when everything really started falling in place. Find out where she lived, so we went over to surveil her house. Just so happens when we pulled up, he's coming out. It's all a black car. The guy coming out matching description. He sees us and he takes off. So we end up chasing him down the road and he wrecks. Before they run the test, he jets out, takes off, leaves the hospital. And so that's when the manhunt started.
Obviously, if you have a kidnapping charge, I consider you extremely dangerous. The fact that we don't know where Miss Carter is and he's linked to it, I consider him extremely dangerous.
We knew that they were investigating, a person of interest. He's on the run, and we hear of these things, but we just can't understand how this person's involved.
Took off on foot, ended up running into a apartment complex, jumping off the second-story balcony. And officers were waiting downstairs, and they took him into custody. He says that if you want me to prove that she's alive, give me my phone and I'll show you.
I'll give you completely what you want. This ain't going to stay. This is going to fail.
He wanted to work a deal where his charge would go federal. Everybody thinks that, federal prison is so much easier than state prison. He says that if you want me to prove that she's alive, give me my phone and I'll show you. So normally we wouldn't, but under the circumstance, we decided to go ahead and give him his phone.
Well, I should let you listen to something. They said they'll let you listen to it. Then you'll know that I'm serious. And I said that you're running out of time.
Carl, it's Beverly. I just want to let you know I'm okay. I haven't been hurt. Just do what he says, and please don't call the police. And if you call the police, it could be bad. Just want you to know I love you very much.
My mom ended by telling my dad how much she loved him. I can't imagine all that she'd been through, of being kidnapped from this home. And she was still concerned with my dad, knowing how loved he was.
We knew right then that he knew where Beverly was at.
How long do we have? Oh, can a person survive without food and water?
Crystal makes the suggestion of a real estate broker. So they started looking through the internet, trying to find one. Well, basically, Beverly was the first one they found that was a broker as well as an agent. So they said, well, if she's a broker and an agent, then she's going to have a lot of money. So that's when their plan started. They contacted her through the fake email that they created and then spoke to her over the phone through the fake phone number.
And so this process of having the spouse come along was not standard by any means. It was a strategy used by these bad people to introduce a female in hopes to make my mom feel more at ease.
We just left Carl in the dust because we knew that he wasn't involved.
I'll give you a reward or whatever. Please, just turn her loose.
Everything started to move. And my brain was like, wait, what's happening? Where is she?
He says, okay, well, if she's still alive, this is where I took her. So we loaded him up in a patrol car and we took him where he said that he had her being held at, and she wasn't there. So he ended up leading us on a wild chase. And that's when his demeanor changed. He raised up, looked at me, and you could tell we had hit something.
I want to say it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I heard pounding on the door, just banging, a lot of banging. And so we woke up.
We were able to get to him before he found out, but we did not want him finding out from anybody else.
And I remember Carl saying, did they find her? Did they find her?
They had come to let me know that my mom had been found.
I remember thinking, this isn't happening. This isn't real life. This is not real life.
I got a phone call in the middle of the night from one of the detectives, and he let me know that they had found Beverly. We did not want Carl to find out from the media or anyone else, so we rushed over to his house and knocked on the door. And as soon as he opened the door, his dad pulled up too.
I remember one of those agents telling me that mom had been found. And I remember replying, that's great. Where is she? And I expected her to tell me the hospital. Just getting checked out. She's okay. Just make sure she's all right. And she apologized. She said, oh, honey, mom's not alive.
Police found Carter buried in a shallow grave behind a concrete business. Lewis has been charged with capital murder and kidnapping.
These investigators were able to look at the towers that had been utilized by this bad guy. And they matched that with companies that he had previously worked for and found this very random concrete plant. They searched that property and found that on the back side of it, this shallow grave that had been dug by these bad people. And truly, to see that spot, it would have been so easy for my mom to never be found.
After she was kidnapped, she was placed in the trunk of the parents' little black car, and ultimately ended up at their house. He took a photograph of her in the trunk, then messaged his wife, Crystal, and said that he had done it. And she was supposed to send Carl the message with a picture and demand ransom money, but it never went that far.
Because the purse had been left locked in that car, it was out of sight and therefore out of mind for the bad guy. How he would get all of my mom's perceived wealth involved having access to her accounts that he had planned to do so with the cards that were within my mom's purse. So as he drove away that day, his plan was already foiled.
the crystal sense. She was in the bathroom and she saw their face and she saw their names on medication bottles. Then they felt like they needed to kill her. So Aaron takes Beverly, loads her back up, and they end up taking her back out there. And that's when he ended up taking her life.
He obviously didn't know her. She was not wealthy. She wasn't a rich broker. She wasn't any of the things that he wanted her to be to help get him out of his lifestyle.
My mom's funeral was full of things that she loved. It was a beautiful service for a very lovely lady. I think it spoke more to her loveliness and the life that she lived rather than the tragedy.
I don't think she realized how much people loved her and how respected she was and how sorry people were that that happened to her.
While I would certainly concede that real estate is a safe industry by and large, every single agent you meet can at least identify with the vulnerability that you feel when you're alone in a vacant house. So what we do through the Beverly Carter Foundation is to encourage people to be safe, raise awareness to those issues that exist, and provide tools and methods and best practices related to how to conduct your business in a way that is efficient and safe and gets these precious agents home to their families safe every night.
You know, all women, and I'm sure men too at times, feel uncomfortable or afraid.
My mom and I do real estate together, and sometimes when she does showings with people she doesn't know, I would love her to text me and go, I'm done, I'm back at the office. It's just a peace of mind in knowing that the person you love is back and safe and everything's okay.
She was full of grace, and I wish I would have told her how much I appreciated her. I know she knows I loved her, but I really would want to make sure she knew how much I loved her and how much I appreciated every second I had with her.
We know that she fought when she was in the trunk of that car. And we know from the testimony of the wife that while she stood guard that night to keep my mom from escaping, that she had to hear the sounds of my mother's prayers. And so as I think about the incredible woman that she was, when put in a situation that I pray no one else ever has to live through, to know that your legacy, your last moments were of love and a little bit of fight and your faith. What a lovely lady.